In the name of Almighty Allah, the entirely merciful and specially merciful, welcome back, dear students, to the seventh lecture of Introduction to Business. I hope you are all safe and sound. Okay, uh, this is the seventh lecture of Introduction to Business. We will be dealing here about management. But before we talk about what's management, before we come to the definition of management, we should know a little bit about the evolution of management thought. The evolution of management thought is a process that started in early days of a human. It began since the period man saw the need to live in groups. Mighty men were able to organize the masses, share them into various groups. The sharing was done according to the masses' strength, mental capacity, and intelligence. So the point is that management has been practiced in one way or another way since the civilization begins. In this regard, there were some theories that came into existence or given by some management scholars, like there was a scientific management theory, there was administrative management theory, there was a behavioral management theory, a management science theory, and organizational environmental theory. So altogether there were five theories given about the management in the history of management. So I'll just talk about, since the topic is very broad, so we will just discuss about some of the theories which are given by the management scholars. So the first theory, we call that the early management. It's called early management thought. The first thought about the management period of 17 to 18, where the industrial revolution was evolved. The late 70s and the early 80s, the industrial revolution was evolved. It emphasizes upon that there the early management thought began. So Adam Smith and James Watt, recognized as a theorist who launched world toward the industrialization. So these two people, Adam Smith and James Watt, recognized as the theorist who launched the world toward industrialization. So the industrialization was launched by these two scholars. Adam Smith brought revolution in financial thoughts, and James Watt's steam engine provides cheaper power that revolutionized the industry. So they both provided base for modern concept of business management theory in practice. Remember that management is used in many places, but it's mostly used in business world. So there were some classical management there were some classical approach of management. There was scientific management approach, administrative management approach, namely bureaucratic management approach. So these approach were there. The scientific management approach was also known as Taylorism. It's also called Taylorism because it was given by the Taylor. Evaluates and sympathize it evaluates workflows with the aim of improving labor productivity. It had enormous impact on industry at the beginning of the 20th century. Like F.W. Taylor, it is also called the father of scientific management. His cooperation is invaluable in this regard. Components are determination of task, planning, proper. So the theory of scientific management was given by the Taylor. He gave this approach, scientific management theory. So if W. Taylor was, as I said before, there was a father of scientific management, and it is an approach that emphasizes on the scientific study of the work. I said that scientific management it's an approach that focuses on sorry, dears, I had to attend the call. Okay, so as we were speaking of, the F.W. Taylor was a father of, or F.W. Taylor was the father of scientific management, and it's an approach that scientific management is an approach that emphasizes on the scientific study of work in order to improve work efficiency, emphasizes on the productivity. So management, the scientific theory of management emphasizes on the productivity. So this is the first thought. Yeah, it has its strengths and weaknesses. That the strength might be focus on the scientific methods of and focus on the scientific methods to enhance productivity with the best resources utilization, and the weakness can be the neglects human elements and focuses only on the productivity. Like here, the very less attention is paid to the human, so that's why the human factor is a little bit neglected in this part. The second theory that I said before was administrative management approach. That here the Henry Fewell and the followers are advocated for this approach, and it provides a conceptual framework for the analyzing management process, and principles of management provide guidelines for the management actions. So that was second administrative management approach. So then we said that the third one was behavioral approach. If we just focus on that, it will take much of our time. So inshallah you will study these things in upcoming in the management subject. I'm just giving here the introduction of management. So here simple thing, management, the evaluation of management thought started from the very early stages. So there are different scholars, they give different opinions about that, but so we simply say that the evaluation of management thought started as just at the same time when the industrial revolution came into existence. When the industrial revolution came into existence, since then the management process start working. So now we will discuss about this point, that what's management. There are many views about management. There are many universal definitions about management. So some people define it in one way. Some scholars have defined it in one way, and the other scholars have defined them in another way. So there isn't. I wouldn't say there is one definition which is generally accepted by all the people. I would simply say that what's management and how to perform management. These two questions will be answered inshallah in this tutorial. So first let's get started. Definitions, like we say that the practice of modern management originates from the 16th century study of low efficiency and failures of certain enterprises conducted by the English statesman Sir Thomas More at the year of 14 to 78 to 15 to 35. At this time, the management started. So because the management, the organization and coordination of the activities of business in order to achieve defined objectives. So we say management is often included as a factor of production along with the machines, materials, all this stuff. So we define management in this way, that the process of getting. So as I said, that there are many definitions. Every scholar defined management in different ways. So I have picked some of the definitions, 1, 2, 3 definitions. You can have these definitions with yourself. So the first we say is the process of getting things done effectively and efficiently through and with the people. The process of getting things done. Like for example, there's a process when you get things done effectively. So effectively means in a way that will help to raise the productivity level, and efficiently means in a short time you do a lot of things. So that's what you say efficiently. Through and how? Through and with the people, like along with the people and through the people. So via people and with people, that's how we say. So the second definition, we say what managers do in organization is called management. So we will talk about what are managers in upcoming lessons. Whatever managers do, whatever the managers do in organization, we call that management. Suppose that there is a process, there is a channel. So the first man come and he's hired, he's fired. So how things are done, what are the methods? Like here, I will not forget to mention the 5 M's of management, the 5 M's which are very important. So let me go to we'd say that Word file so I can easily explain this. I would say the 5 M's here, because it says that whatever managers do in whatever managers do in an organization, we call that management. So what do the managers do in organization? So they manage the 5 M's. So I will just mention the 5 M's here. What shall I mention? The 5 M's. 5 M of what? The 5 M's of management. So these M's, we don't have to forget these 5 M's of the management. The first M, the first M would be, methods. The most important, I will just start from there. The most important M is a man, So management is done by or with the men, or we can say, we also call them that men or women. Women can also be part of that. So man and women, both. And then we have the other might be, money. After that, the second M would be money, because of how the money is managed in organization is also management. And then you say, we also call that money management. We have got the third M, can be machinery. Machinery, how machineries are managed, how they are operated, can also be management. We call that machinery management. And then we say, can other be materials, how materials are managed, can also be. And these things can be managed by the one person. We call that person manager. So the fourth M is material. So how materials are used, how they are used, whether they are used more than they are necessary or they are used less than they are necessary, how they are used, are they used effectively or efficiently or not. So, and then we have got the fifth M might be method. So not might be, but the fifth M is a method. So all these things, whenever you do all these things in an organization, it means you are doing what? You are doing management. You are doing management. Okay, so whenever you do all these 5 things inside an organization, it means you are doing management. So these can be called the 5 M's of the management. Okay, dear students, I hope you understood. Now let's move on. The third definition: management is an achievement of organization goals through major functions of planning, organizing, leading, and controlling. So management is an achievement of organizational goals. What are the organizational goals? Organizational goals are the missions and visions, mission and visions, what the organization work to achieve them. And these goals can be achieved by planning, organizing, leading, or it's also called directing, and controlling. So these 4 principles, these 4 functions of management can be put together in order to achieve the goals. Whenever you put these 4 functions in order to achieve the goals, it means you are doing management. Okay, so that's it. Now, okay, I'll just give you the brief definition of داری. So ما شما میگم شاگردان عزیز management یعنی مدیریت. میگه the process of getting things done effectively and efficiently. انجام کردن چیزها با موثریت با مردم و همراه مردم عبارت از مدیریت است. دیگه تعریفش ما شما میکنیم که what managers do in organization is called management. چیزی که مدیرها در یک اداره یا در یک نهاد انجام میدهد، کدام کاری که در یک اداره انجام میشه، او را ما شما چی میگیم؟ management یا مدیریت میگیم. یا میگیم که management is an achievement of organizational goals. management که از به دست آوردن یا دریافت کردن مهارت‌های organizational goals یا ما میگیم که اهداف سازمان از استفاده کردن function of management، مثلا planning, organizing, leading and controlling. وقتی که ما و شما planning, organizing, leading and controlling یک جا کنیم و هدف از این چیزا به دست آوردن اهداف اداره باشه، او را ما و شما مدیریت و management میگیم. When we don't manage our work goal, what happens? وقتی که ما و شما management نکنیم چی واقع میشه؟ Whenever we don't manage our work goal, what happens? There, what happens? I won't explain this thing happens. You see the picture, this happens. So then you will be lost. You won't know what to do and how to do it, because you failed in managing things. Therefore I say that you have to manage, and management will help you to do things effectively and efficiently, and it will increase the productivity of your organization. Now, there is the thing that use it. Management can be science and it can be art. So some people ask this question that what is management? Is it a science or it can be art? It's an art. So there are a lot of things to be discussed about these two things. Management is art and a science. But I would simply tell you that the knowledge of management is a science and the application of management is an art. So this is how we put together. So we say that if you do not manage your time, the time will manage you. So you have to manage things so the things won't manage you. And once you are been managed by by the things, then it will be hard for you to get rid of from them. So you will be just slacking off your time doing nothing useful. Okay, so now uh, before we said that whatever managers in the definition of management, we said that whatever managers do in the organization, we call that management. So who are managers now? We say manager, someone who works with other people by coordination, their work in order to accomplish organization goal. So manager is is a person who work with other people, coordinate with other people with their coordination or with his own sorry commandment, their work in order to accomplish the organizational goal. So manager use the resources which are available inside the organization in order to achieve the organizational goal. We call that manager. A person who utilizes, a person who uses the available resources inside the organization in order to achieve organizational goal, we call the person manager. Or we can also say that someone whose job is to manage part or all of the company or other organization, we call that manager. There are a lot of definitions. Like some, we also define it someone who is in charge of training and organizing sport. There could be sport event manager as well. Someone who is in charge of business affairs, or like can also be called a business can be called a manager. Anyone who is involved in planning the other definition, we can call this definition can be universally accepted. So, and anyone who is involved in planning, training, supervision and controlling activity is called manager. Like activities of what, like we simply, if we put it in a simple way, so we would say it would be very very effective if you say that all the affairs or all the activities which are controlled inside the organization by a person, we call that person a manager. Or anyone who is involved in planning and training, supervision and controlling activities called manager. شاگردان عزیز مدیر مکی را میگیم هر یک شخصی که در پلنینگ و همچنان ترینینگ و سوپرویژن یا در نظارت، همچنان در کنترل یا اداره فعالیت های یا عمل که دخیل باشه او را ما شما مدیر میگیم. یا یک شخصی که مردم کار میکنه، که کمک مردم یا با کمک کار مردم in order to accomplish کمک ازی کوشش میکنه که organizational goals را achieve کنه، او را ما شما چی میگیم؟ manager میگیم. So there are like manager can be boss, right? Manager can be head, can be chief, can be president, can be chief executive, supervisor. These can be names. Then we have different types of that. We will discuss inshallah in some other part. You see this now. The next thing we will discuss is the function or process of management. This is the next thing we will discuss: function or process of management. Objective of management, we say planning, organizations, staffing, leading, controlling, and achievement of objective. So we do the planning, this is the chart explanation of the process of management. We do planning. The objective is, in order to achieve the objective, what we do. So here you see that for the achievement of the objective, we have to do planning, organization, organizing, staffing, leading, controlling. We'll study all these 5 functions of or process of management inshallah in this class or in this tutorial. So this is another one. We say that management functions, you can call that start from planning, organizing, staffing, directing. It's also called leading and controlling. These are the functions of management. We will study this. I said before that management is very important for the business. We do management in order to increase the productivity and effectiveness, efficiency of our organization. In order to increase the productivity of an organization, you have to do management. You have to manage the activities of a business well. Okay, or the activities of a business should be well managed. So these activities can be managed by the manager. Okay. So the first thing we will have is planning. So what is planning and how do we do planning? Let's discuss this. Before we jump into the planning, there was another definition came into my mind about the management, was that sometimes people call that the art of getting things done through the people. It can be called management as well. So now let's move on to the first function of management. That is what? That's a planning. So what's planning? So we say that planning means the determination of what is to be done, how and where it's to be done, who is to do it, and how the results are to be evaluated. So remember that planning means determination of work. You have to determine what should you do, how should you do, and where should you do, by who you should do, and what will be the results. Whenever you have these things, it means you are planning. There are a lot of alternatives, and you picked some alternatives for the betterment of organization. It means you are planning. So the planning is the first step. You have objectives. In order to achieve the objectives, you have to plan. You have to decide what should be done, you have to decide how it should be done, and you have to decide where it should be done, and you have to decide by whom should be done, and how the results will be achieved. So whenever you go through these things at the beginning, it means you are planning. Come to the second one, setting organization goals and deciding how best to achieve. You set some goals. In the planning is the first function of a management. In the planning, you set organization goals, and then you decide how to achieve them, or you decide how to achieve them in a best way, right? So the other one we can say that the process of setting organization goals and deciding in advance the action taken to achieve these goals. So in planning, what you do, you first set organization goals. In order to achieve the goals in advance, you take into consideration that what activities should be done in order to achieve these goals. So let me go back to the word file. In planning, we will have these things. Like in planning, what do we do? In planning, the first thing I will say that we set organizational goals. What do? We set organizational goals. So in planning, we set organizational goals. Once and then we decide how to best achieve them. How to best achieve them. So this is the meaning of what? This is the meaning of planning. So in planning, we set organizational goals, and then we decide how to best achieve them. We make some arrangements at the very first. Pre-arrangement, we call that. Or we can say it is, in planning, we also say it is an effort. What is planning? It's an effort to manage the future. It's an effort to manage what? We manage the future in planning. It's an effort to manage the future. Efforts कि मुस्तकबिल रा इदारा करें. So planning increases. What does planning do? Planning increases the profitability. If you plan well, so the profitability of your organization and productivity will be increased. Productivity and profitability. If you want to increase the profitability and productivity of your organization, you have to plan well. Okay, you have to pay attention to the first planning. The second can be if you do not plan. So sir, we do not plan, what is going to happen? If we do not plan, then plan for future failure. If you do not plan for the things to be done, then you have to plan for failure. You should plan for failure, because without the planning, your failure or your failing is guaranteed. So environmental scanning and analysis can also be like planning. Planning also means that we scan the environmental scanning. We scan the environmental and analysis. So we say that scanning the environment and scanning and analyzing. So I would just put it in this way, so it will give proper meaning. So scanning and analyzing. Scanning and analyzing can be called what? Scanning and analyzing, it can be called planning. So when we scan and analyze the organizational goals, it means we do what? We plan. So this was all about planning. Or in planning, what are involved in planning? Let me just discuss this was as well. What are involved in planning? So in planning, we have that we select. What do we do? Involve. So what are involved in planning? So we select in planning, selecting missions. In planning, we select some missions and objectives. We select missions and objectives. We also say that actions, the second can be called the actions to achieve the actions to achieve them is also involved where in the planning. So number 3 would be allocation. I told you that in planning we allocate the resources. Allocation of resources. Resource can be human, can be physical, can be like non-physical. All these things we manage them. So we carefully analyze before making decisions about future course of actions from amongst alternatives. Suppose there are a lot of alternatives and we carefully make decisions about the future course of action from amongst the different alternatives. So whenever we do this, it means we are managing. We are doing what? We are managing. Dear student, this was about planning, the first function. The other functions will be inshallah discussed in the other tutorial. I hope you understood this. Stay safe and stay happy.